I was pointing out yesterday how Prahlāda Mahārāja had an attachment for Krishna. Krishna, the Vasudev Krishna. Now, we can say that Vasudev means Lord Narsingadev, but others also say that Vasudev refers to Krishna in particular, because in Prahlāda Mahārāja's prayers in Vishnu Puran, it has been said that the Lord wearing yellow cloth appeared. And this is also evidenced by the text number 37 and 38. 37, we can see the specific words used there are Krishna Graha Grahitatma. So Krishna Graha Grahitatma. Krishna's name is called out. And in the 38th verse, we see Govinda Parirambitaha. Govinda Parirambitaha. So this is Prahlāda Mahārāja getting an embrace from Lord Govinda. And because of these two verses, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur brings out this point that some others maintain the conclusion that Prahlād first had attraction for Vasudev, and then later, after Lord Narsingadev appeared, he developed an attachment and affinity for Lord Narsingadev. Anyways, this is just a detail that we can keep in mind. Now, we had seen the characteristics of Hiranyakashipu. How in the 19th verse, in spite of his being an exclusive Lord and Master and proprietor of the overall universe, Hiranyakashipu was dissatisfied. Why? Because his senses were uncontrolled. So we pointed that out. So this is a good time to compare Hiranyakashipu with his son, Prahlāda Mahārāja. Prahlāda Mahārāja, on the other hand, he did not have any possession whatsoever. And he was going to be in constant danger in the hands of his natural protector, his father, and who is always determined to kill him. And in spite of all of this, Prahlād was always happy, peaceful, and self-satisfied. Why? Because of his pure devotion. Because of his being established on the highest perfection of pure devotional service. It is because he is drawing all strength, all fearlessness from his devotional relationship with Krishna. So therefore, having discussed the overall qualities of Prahlāda Mahārāja, which are, you can say, more external qualities, we characterize that in that acronym PRUNE. He was prideless, he was respectful, he was undisturbed in every circumstance of life, he was non-envious, and everyone he was treating as his dearmost friend, just like Paramatma. And in this way, he was always above any tinge of material desires. And he had the power of subduing lust. In this way, he was a Mahabhagavata devotee and also possessed paramount Brahmanical qualities. At this point, Narad Muni is going to further detail about the mood of Prahlāda Mahārāja and his internal experience of the ecstatic love for Krishna on account of his natural attraction for Krishna. So, 37th verse onwards, we are going deeper into Prahlāda Mahārāja's qualities. So, Prahlād literally means one who is jubilant, internally jubilant, and he also causes others to be jubilant. And that's the natural quality of a Vaishnava. From the very beginning of his childhood, Narad Muni says, Prahlāda Mahārāja was uninterested in childish playthings because his absorption was somewhere else. Indeed, he gave them up altogether and remained silent and dull. being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So this is the phrase we picked up, Krishna Graha Grahitatma, fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness, he could not understand how the world goes on being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. He just cannot relate to people of this world. So when sometimes in your life you feel you're not able to relate to people of this world and the circumstances of this world, it's a good thing, which means that we are moving closer to the qualities of Prahlāda Mahārāja. So 37th purport, Srila Prabhupada describes the effects of the absorption in Krishna consciousness that Prahlāda Mahārāja had. A fully Krishna conscious person, although situated in this material world, does not see anything but Krishna anywhere and everywhere. So when we are reading this, we can also see how far we are from the standard of Krishna consciousness. When we find different objects of this material world putting their glittering appeal before our eyes, we should know that there's a long way to go for us. Because we can see from these descriptions, what does it mean to be a pure devotee? So fully Krishna conscious person, although situated in this material world, so they may be just moving around just like ordinary person, does not see anything but Krishna, anywhere and everywhere. This is the sign of a Mahabhagavat. And Prahlāda Mahārāja is Mahabhagavat Uttama. So Mahabhagavat is already the greatest possible devotee. And Prahlāda Mahārāja's position is Mahabhagavat Uttama. He is the greatest of the greatest devotee. The Mahabhagavat sees Krishna everywhere because of his attitude of pure love for Krishna. An exalted devotee or Mahatma who is rarely to be seen remains fully conscious of Krishna and constantly sees the Lord within the core of his heart. It is sometimes said that when one is influenced by evil stars like Saturn, Rahu or Ketu, he cannot make advancement in any prospective activity. In just the opposite way, Prahlāda Mahārāja was influenced by Krishna, the supreme planet. It's a nice analogy. You may complain about the planetary influence, but we want to be influenced by other kind of planetary influence, the influence of Krishna. So Prahlāda Mahārāja was influenced by Krishna, the supreme planet, and thus he could not think of the material world and live without Krishna consciousness. This is his situation. And then Prabhupada then offers an example of Prahlāda Mahārāja's natural attachment to Krishna, which is captured by the phrase Naisargiki Ratihi in this verse. Naisargiki Ratihi. So Prabhupada writes, although Prahlāda Mahārāja was only a boy, he had no interest in plaything. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:2-42, Viraktiranyatra. The symptom of perfect Krishna consciousness is that one loses interest in all material activities. For a small boy to give up plaything is impossible, but Prahlāda Mahārāja, being situated in first class devotional service, was always absorbed in a trance of Krishna consciousness. Just as a materialistic person is always absorbed in thoughts of material gain, a Mahabhagavat like Prahlāda Mahārāja is always absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, so this is the analogy, that just like materialistic person is always absorbed in thoughts of material gain, a Mahabhagavat like Prahlāda Mahārāja is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that Prahlāda did not become attracted to Krishna in the way most devotees do. His mind was completely overcome by Krishna, who was like an object of desire. It's like just like materialists run after material sense objects. So in the case of Prahlāda Mahārāja, there is a natural attraction. Thus he didn't understand the world as a material phenomenon, but saw it only as it was connected to Krishna. This is not something that we experience typically. The objects of the material world definitely have a spell in our consciousness because of which we run after them. But in the case of Prahlāda Mahārāja, he cannot relate to this. Why the objects of this material world could be attractive to anybody. That's Prahlāda Mahārāja's internal status. So his neglect of the external is apparent further in the 38th verse. Prahlāda Mahārāja was always absorbed in thought of Krishna, thus being always embraced by the Lord. He did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking and talking, were being automatically performed. He was totally transcendental to any form of sensory activities. Prabhupada writes in the 38th purport, a small child, while being cared for by his mother, does not know how the needs of the body for eating, sleeping, lying down, passing water, and evacuating are being fulfilled. He is simply satisfied to be on the lap of his mother. Similarly, Prahlāda Mahārāja was exactly like a small child being cared for by Govinda. The necessary activities of his body were performed without his knowledge. This is 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 8th and the 9th verse, where it starts with Naiva kinchit karomi iti. One does not do anything apparently because one is so self-realized, so much focused on one's spiritual existence. The bodily functions are just automatically getting carried out without one's knowledge. So it's almost like that for Prahlāda Mahārāja. As a father and mother care for their child, Govinda cared for Prahlāda Mahārāja, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. This is Krishna consciousness. So what is Krishna consciousness? To be always cognizant that I am being maintained and protected by the Supreme Lord. And there is nothing else that matters in my life. Prahlāda Mahārāja is the vivid example of perfection in Krishna consciousness. And then the description goes even further, going into the ecstatic emotions of Prahlāda Mahārāja. So 39 through 41, they just bring out the ecstatic symptoms of Prahlāda Mahārāja's devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prahlād's relationship with Krishna was intimate. And so Prahlāda spontaneously expressed deep spiritual emotions. So Prabhupada explains in purport number 39, like how Prahlāda Mahārāja sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described to have the manifestations of all these external or the internal ecstasy giving shape to the external transformations of his body. So likewise here also Prahlāda Mahārāja is exhibiting the ecstatic symptoms of loving devotional service. So Prabhupada, continuing on from the 38th purport, Srila Prabhupada writes in the 39th purport, this verse further clarifies the comparison of a devotee to a child. Right? If a mother leaves her small child in his bed or cradle and goes away to attend to some family duties, the child immediately understands that his mother has gone away and therefore he cries. But as soon as the mother returns and cares for the child laughs and becomes jubilant. Similarly, Prahlāda Mahārāja, being always absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna, sometimes felt separation, thinking, where is Krishna? This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahanime. When an exalted devotee feels that Krishna is invisible, having gone away, he cries in separation. And sometimes, when he sees that Krishna has returned to care for him, he laughs. Just as a child sometimes laughs upon understanding that his mother is taking care of him. These symptoms are called bhava. And these bhavas are visible in the activities of a perfect devotee. So Srila Jiva Goswami also describes that rasa is tasted by exalted devotees, and therefore he offers the description of Prahlāda Mahārāja that is given here as an example, that there are two types of relishers of deep affection. Who are the two types of relishers of these bhavas? So, number one are those persons who actually participate in the Supreme Lord's pastimes. So they are, in fact, while living in this material world, they are participating in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And the second are those who identify with those who participate in the pastimes. So those in the first category have perfected their eternal rasa. And now there are two categories of the second category or second type existing. So the second type is those who identify with those who participate in the Leela or pastimes. And there are two types of those. The first are those who taste rasa by hearing about the Lord's pastimes with his associates. And the second category are those who taste rasa by hearing about the Lord's sweetness. So pastimes and sweetness, they lead to identifying with those personalities who are participating in the pastimes. So this is the secret of getting that rasa of devotional service. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur furthermore elaborates on the point of child crying for its mother, who has set the child on the ground while she is attending to the household chores. And so when Prahlāda Mahārāja did not see the Lord, he thought, where has my Lord gone, giving me up? Thinking in that way, Prahlād's mind would become troubled and he would cry. When the Lord would again appear, he would say, "Oh Prahlād, child, why are you crying? You have not only seen me for a moment. Sorry, you have only not seen me for a moment." Then Prahlād would laugh like a happy child in the embrace of his mother. So in this way there is crying and laughing going on. So feeling separation from the Supreme Lord, and then they get to furthermore see the Supreme Lord for a moment, come back, and then they laugh. And this way Prahlād thought, my Lord makes me happy by showing himself to me by his mercy. Thinking this, he would be joyful. So we are getting some glimpse of what does it mean by relishing the rasa of a perfected devotee. So Narad Muni continues, sometimes upon seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prahlāda Mahārāja would loudly call in full anxiety. He sometimes lost his shyness in jubilation and began dancing in ecstasy, and sometimes being fully absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna, he felt oneness and imitated the pastimes of the Lord. 40th verse, Prabhupada expands. Prahlāda Mahārāja sometimes felt that the Lord was far away from him and therefore called him loudly. When he saw that the Lord was before him, he was fully jubilant. Sometimes thinking himself one with the Supreme, he imitated the Lord's pastimes, and in separation from the Lord, he would sometimes show symptoms of madness. So this is one of the ways that devotees experience oneness of the Supreme Lord, by really enacting the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and this way deepening their absorption on the Supreme Lord, not thinking that the Lord is impersonal. As a child cries when left by his mother, when Prahlāda Mahārāja felt that the Lord was away from him, he began to cry. Again, a devotee like Prahlād sometimes sees that the Lord is coming from a long distance to pacify him, like a mother responding to a child, saying, "My dear child, do not cry, I am coming." Then the devotee, without being ashamed due to his surroundings and circumstances, begins to dance, thinking, "Here is my Lord is coming." Thus the devotee in full ecstasy sometimes imitates the pastimes of the Lord, just as the cowherd boys used to imitate the behavior of the jungle animals. However, he does not actually become the Lord. Prahlāda Mahārāja achieved the spiritual ecstasies described herein by his advancement in spiritual understanding. Just imagine, like when we are chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this is the experience we are going through. A child helplessly dependent on its mother. So we can see the detail that is coming here in this section, elaborating on that point of how a child becomes dependent on its mother. And likewise, during our chanting, we are being like that child who doesn't see anything else apart from the Supreme Lord. So Prahlad's love for Krishna evoked the reciprocation back from Krishna, and that reciprocation is continuous, and that is what is there in 41st verse. Sometimes feeling the touch of the Lord's lotus hands, he became spiritually jubilant and remained silent, his hair standing on end and tears gliding down from his half-closed eyes because of his love for the Lord. So Prabhupada writes in the 41st purport, when a devotee feels separation from the Lord, he becomes eager to see where the Lord is, and sometimes when he feels pangs of separation, tears flow incessantly from his half-closed eyes. So the words Chakshusha Pravrishaitam refers to tears falling incessantly from the devotee's eyes. These symptoms, which appear in pure devotional ecstasy, were visible in the body of Prahlāda Mahārāja. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further gives detail on this. Prahlād's hair would at times stand on end, and he would think, where shall I go? Where will I see the Lord? Sometimes out of grief, in his separation, Prahlāda closed his eyes, and then he suddenly saw the Lord in his heart. By the touch of Lord's hand, he became blissful, and his hairs stood on end. He became stunned, unable to move, his half-closed eyes filled with tears of bliss as an expression of his affection for the Lord. So in this way, hearing of Prahlād's spontaneous ecstatic exchanges with Krishna is just so attractive that we naturally yearn to taste a drop of the sweetness that Prahlāda is tasting. And that's what is going to happen when we are reading this section. And finally, in the 42nd verse, Narada points out, because of his association with perfect unalloyed devotees who had nothing to do with anything material, Prahlāda Mahārāja constantly engaged in the service of the Lord's lotus feet. By seeing his bodily features, when he was in perfect ecstasy, persons very poor in spiritual understanding became purified. This is the power of association of a pure devotee. In other words, Prahlāda Mahārāja bestowed upon them transcendental bliss. 42nd purport. So, plunging deeper. Apparently, Prahlāda Mahārāja was placed in circumstances in which he was always tortured by his father. In such material conditions, one cannot have an undisturbed mind. But since bhakti is unconditional, ahaituki apratihata, Prahlāda Mahārāja was never disturbed by the chastisements of Hiranyakashipu. On the contrary, the bodily symptoms of his ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead turned the minds of his friends, who had also been born in atheistic families. Instead of being disturbed by the torments of his father, Prahlāda influenced these friends and cleansed their minds, which we are going to see later how he did that. A devotee is never contaminated by material conditions, but persons subjected to material conditions can become spiritually advanced and blissful upon seeing the behavior of a pure devotee. So, these characteristics we need to keep in mind as we go forward in the pastimes. Then we will understand how Prahlāda Mahārāja was so much absorbed in the Supreme Lord that the external disturbing conditions just did not matter to him. As it is described here, he was so aloof from the world, he just cannot relate to it. So then you will be able to understand when he was going through the torture treatment from his father, Hiranyakashipu, how he was maintaining his attraction and affinity for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you very much.